All right, guys, welcome to the show. We're all over the place today. So, in a little bit, Alex Jones has now officially turned on Ron DeSantis, who he previously was expressing support for, and he's going back to Daddy Trump. The reasoning is very interesting, so we'll talk about that. There's also a devastating new study that just came out that talks about how low wages are killing people. Low wages massively increase your mortality risk. And then there's a bunch of stuff. I got some weird, creepy religious revival cult thing that right-wingers are fawning over. And I have a really crazy debate between the hosts on Fox and Friends. And guess what? It's actually a good debate. Shocking, I know. But there was a good debate on Fox and Friends. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Oh, before I do that, I got to do it. Because I'm so close. I got to do it. Shameless plug. Everybody sub to the channel because we're getting closer and closer to that 1 million sub number. Really been striving hard to get there, and it's been a super uphill climb. So if you guys can subscribe, I would deeply appreciate it. When we get to that 1 million sub mark number, we'll do like a celebratory stream and have some fun with it. Because it's been a long time coming, man. It's been a long time coming. So help me subvert the algorithm. You know they don't give us too much love. Click that subscribe button. Click that little bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. All that fun stuff. Comment, like, and just so everybody knows, you could listen to the full shows on Spotify now as well. We drop the full shows every day we do a show over on Spotify. And support the show on Patreon because we don't talk to any advertisers at all. Never had a conversation with a corporation over a decade of doing this, and that's because of your guys' direct support. So if you support the show, if you like the show, subscribe on Patreon and support Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. Okay, now that the shameless plugs are out of the way, let's get into it here. So, Brian Kilmeade and Steve Doocy have honestly been not too happy with each other for a long time, if I'm being honest. I mean, there's been a number of debates that they've had. It is always them debating, and this one was really interesting as well. Now, usually in these debates, I think Doocy's the correct one and Kilmeade is incorrect. We're going to see now if that trend holds true, but they get into a big foreign policy debate here. It has to do with Russia, Ukraine, and China. So China is now calling for diplomacy, negotiation, basically trying to find a way out of this escalation towards World War III, which is honestly getting scarier and scarier by the day. So they jump in and say, hey man, we should all get to the table. And they've sort of like kind of tried to play a neutral role, but now there was some mumblings from the State Department that maybe China is going to start providing some weapons to Russia. And so there was this round of press in the West about how, you know, how bad China is and about how they're trying to help the aggressor and all that stuff. But China comes out and says, no, here's our plan. Let's get to the negotiating table. So then they talk about it on Fox News, and here's how that goes.
The China 12-point plan is comical and stupid. The reason why there's no peace plan is because the Russians took 25% of the country, and they want to take more. And if they stop now, they have been rewarded for this invasion, which is a precedent that will only give them a reason to invade again as soon as they rearm, re-up, and learn from their past mistakes.
Do you think they'll stop?
Do I think what?
Do you think they'll stop? You said if they stop.
No, I'm just saying they actually could say, oh yeah, they don't care about their people, about 200,000 casualties, 60,000 minimum dead. They don't care about their people. They literally don't pick them up in the field. So
I gathered their peace plan that was more about we don't want nuclear weapons. We oppose that.
But no, the thing is, it's respecting the sovereignty of all countries. Really?
Yeah,
this is your ally, your number one ally, took 25% of a country unprovoked, abandoning the Cold War mentality. Oh, that's a good. Get generic and philosophical.
Okay, just take note as Kilmeade keeps talking. Look at Doocy's face. There's like 3 or 4 times he's trying to jump in, but he like waits, and you can see it on his face that he's chopping at the bit.
Ceasing hostilities. Yeah, right. After you take half the country, then you say, okay, let's stop fighting. That's the whole point. How can you have peace when an aggressor nation has already taken and killed and try to wipe you out.
But,
so this is why China should not be praised. This is anybody clear-thinking person knows this is not a real list.
Well, Brian, it's my opinion. It would be a great thing if it happened.
What happened? Peace?
Right. Don't you think it would be a great thing?
Because you're rewarding a country that ate another country.
Just think about the dynamics between Russia and China right now. Russia is trying to get lethal aid from China. China is their benefactor, essentially. They're the superpower in it. If China's saying, hey, Putin, look at this list. This is our list. Let's follow this stuff. Let's end this thing. It's screwing up the whole country.
Can we put up a map of what Russia has done to Ukraine?
No, we understand.
They've taken up a third of the country, and China says keep the country.
I am being like a majority of Americans being optimistic about what happens.
About what?
Okay,
optimistic about giving Ukraine?
We want it to end.
Guys, we have so many great stories we've got to get to. We need to talk about Brad Paisley. I agree with you. I agree with both of y'all. I see both of your points. I think America does. If Russia can listen to China, no nuclear weapons, great for us. So let's go on to this, because Brad Paisley, he is...
The ending of that segment. God, that's like everything wrong with corporate media in one segment there is like they actually start having a good discussion about serious policy stuff, and then she cuts him off and is like, guys, we have to talk about Brad Paisley. Yeah, let it rock, man. Let it rock. Now, to be fair, usually with shows like this, there's a producer in your ear saying, oh, get off it, got to go to this, got to go to that. But I would have liked to hear the rest of that debate and that discussion, because it was actually substantive. So just to give everybody the background on China's proposal here, we won't go through all of it. It would take a while. I'll just give you the gist of it. So number one is respecting the sovereignty of all countries. This is what China is calling for. Now, again, it is kind of ironic because, yeah, Russia is your ally, and you're saying respect the sovereignty of all countries. So is your peace plan like, hey, Russia, just get out? Like, hey, respect the sovereignty of all countries, so our ally is wrong, so just withdraw. I mean, it would be good if they withdrew, but I don't think that's exactly going to happen. Abandoning the Cold War mentality, ceasing hostilities, returning peace talks or resuming peace talks, resolving the humanitarian crisis, protecting civilians and prisoners of war, keeping nuclear power plants safe, reducing strategic risks, that also has to do with nuclear weapons, facilitating grain exports so it doesn't impact the global economy nearly as much, stopping unilateral sanctions, keeping industrial and supply chains stable, promoting post-conflict resolution. So this is their list. It's just a broad outline of like, hey, it's good to do negotiation, it's good to do diplomacy, it's good to talk, it's good to hear each other out. Let's start doing that because this is kind of spiraling out of control. That's what China is saying. Now, why are they releasing this? Like, what's the purpose? Well, I think Ducey's correct about something, because he's saying, look, this is a message from the Chinese government to their ally in Russia. And the message is, hey, man, our support is conditional. Like, they already don't like the fact that Russia has put them in this position where, you know, they're their ally, but they're making a mockery of international law. And so China's saying, effectively, if you want our support, there are some very clear lines that you better not cross. And one of those lines is nukes. Don't you dare think about using nukes, because then, you know, our support is conditional. We're going gonzo in a situation where you escalate too much. So the internal politics of this are interesting. Now, China can be doing that as a sincere and genuine attempt to sort of avoid escalation that gets out of control. Or China can be doing the Machiavellian move of like, let's have our public face be, hey, Russia, chill, bro, don't go too far. But internally, it could be like a wink and a nod, so that if Russia does go too far, China can say, we had nothing to do with it. You guys saw our public statement. You know, we were against them escalating any further than they already have. So it's interesting to sort of try and parse out what exactly is going on here and figure out what their real positions are. Now, having said all that, I'm amazed that anybody can look at this attempt from China and scoff at it, because even just the talk about talking at this moment is a positive development, because the sides are so ossified and it's escalated so much that, you know, anybody who brings up, hey, maybe we should de-escalate, is sort of like scoffed at and laughed out of the room and treated like a dumb person, when in reality, I mean, there is no other alternative. The other alternative is keep going tit for tat, keep doing escalation after escalation, and then eventually there's nowhere else to escalate but World War III, which is, would be horrendous beyond description. You can't even put into words how horrendous that would be, particularly in the nuclear age. So now to the debate that Ducey and Kilmeade were happening, look, I don't like Brian Kilmeade. Usually Steve Ducey is correct in these debates, even though I don't like Steve Ducey either. But it's also true that Kilmeade might not be wrong, right? So, like, if you actually come through with a peace agreement, and you have all the terms and conditions laid out, all sides agree to it, nobody's happy, but everybody's accepting. Yet, it is possible that it functions as sort of like a Neville Chamberlain moment. Like, oh, great, here's our agreement, and then Russia could just rip it up and do an invasion of a different post-Soviet state and say, we think this is ours too, in the same way we think Ukraine is ours, and we think it was a fake state, and we think it was a mistake, and we want to rebuild the Russian Empire. So, in the final analysis, we don't know. Kilmeade could be right that it's a fool's errand to try to negotiate with or appease somebody who is unappeasable. But I will say, it's worth a try, right? Because not every historical situation is World War II. It's just like, and this is like the go-to thing where any conflict anywhere in the world gets immediately discussed and analyzed through the lens of World War II, Neville Chamberlain. And it's like, there's been way more wars than just one war. And it is possible that if you do have a negotiated settlement, it's possible it holds, right? I don't know, but you don't know either. But what I will say is, it's worth a try. And if it doesn't work out in the final analysis, well, so be it. Then we have to cross that bridge when we come to it, and then the conversation gets a lot more difficult, and the strategy gets a lot more difficult. But I'm very... It really irks me and creeps me out that some people don't even want to give it a try. That some people just swap this whole discussion aside and act like it is definitely World War II and you are definitely Neville Chamberlain if you want to try to reach some sort of negotiated settlement. Because again, the thing people have to grapple with is this is the nuclear era. It's not the same as the pre-nuclear era. You are gambling with the highest stakes imaginable. And so even though I'm sure, I'm not sure exactly what China's motives are. I'm not sure if they're doing a Machiavellian game here, if they're being upfront and honest. But either way, at face value, this is the direction we need to go. This absolutely is the direction we need to go. And if you can get Zelensky and Putin to sit down and you get an outline of a negotiated settlement worked out, it's worth a shot. It's worth a try. And then if there's egg on everybody's face and they agree to the deal and then Putin just ignores it and keeps invading places, well, then it's like, you guys were right with your World War II comparisons and your Neville Chamberlain comparisons. But we don't know that yet, and peace is worth a chance, especially in the nuclear age. So, Kilmeade is very dismissive of this entire conversation at all. So let me ask him something. Is there no scenario with this fight where you think diplomacy and negotiation is warranted? So is it just never warranted? And I'm sure his response would be, you have to crush Russia. You have to just defeat Russia. And it's like, okay, yeah, I could see that, but we live in the real world. And if that doesn't happen, or that's not on the table, or there's less than a 1% chance of that actually happening, then what? Then what? Do you just have perpetual war? Does it last 5 years, 10 years, and we stay with this current status quo of tens of thousands of people dying on a regular basis? Is that fair? Is that just? Is that good for the people in the region? That's a lot of pain and a lot of suffering and a lot of death. Are you okay with that? And that would be a best case scenario if the war continues. A worst case scenario would be it escalates out of control, and then you have some sort of nuclear conflict. You have the battle lines drawn for World War III, and that's unthinkably disastrous and terrifying. So to just be so dismissive of the entire conversation of negotiation and diplomacy strikes me as really dumb. So Steve Ducey, who's being optimistic with his take here, like, hey, let's sort of give it a shot. I don't see how anybody who's reasonable can disagree with that. You have to at least give peace a chance. And there's none of that going on. In fact, they squashed the outline of a peace agreement. Boris Johnson came in early on in the war and was like, we don't want you to make peace, Ukraine. We don't want you to do that. You know, we want you to crush Russia. And the U.S. views this as strategically positive to sort of bleed out Russia over time. But you're playing with fire. You're playing with fire, and they may be overplaying their hand. So let's hope something good comes out of this, because the only part of the entire discussion here about the Russia-Ukraine war that's obvious to me is that people need to talk. They need to talk. They just need to talk. And when you have people objecting even to that, it's hard to find any path forward that's non-disastrous. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.